All right. Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. So, pretty important information. Um, People be like, well, why are you doing all this stuff, Jillian? Shouldn't you be like going to work at some, work a day job and be a drone or go study in school for something and be something that you're not and all this stuff? And yeah, we go to school to try to survive all the diseases and develop inventions that will help not only themselves but the world. And so I've already done that. And you know, I have a contribution to humanity that many people will not appreciate because they've been stuck in the paradigms of the formula to life and their lifestyle. Okay, they think that everyone should be doing what they're doing, and there's so many ways to contribute to society. And so I do this not only to save myself and to expect things that might happen based upon so many indicators that this is how I am saving myself and surviving the society that I live in, that lives in two different worlds, the as above and so below. And some people are straddling both worlds because they understand what's going on in the underbelly of society, but they still have to perform and maintain in the other part of society. And it's tough when you understand what's going on one side and you still have to play the game on the other side, and other people have absolutely no idea what's going on one side. And so they, are just, you don't even know how to freaking relate to them, but that's kind of how shit works. So right now, hindsight is always 2020. And so I was just going through everything to figure out why we have so many died suddenlies, and to give you more information and give you another perspective to look from besides blaming just one thing, which I know is prevalent in the anti-V world with all these blood clots and myocarditis and all that stuff. People want to blame just the V's. Now, we're in a huge climate change that has been told to us for at least over 20 years. And climate change causes, viscosity and plasmic density in the blood. Cold can make blood thicker, warm can make blood thinner, and then also growth. And that growth can also make blood thicker. And it's crazy because it's about transition, slow transition. It's not about trying to adapt to something so quickly that it shocks the system. But here's the thing, those who are strong can handle relatively safe shocks to the system, so to speak. But those who are weak, those who have been conditioned for relatively safe shocks to the system, when there's an extreme shock to the system, they don't have what it takes, and things happen. Sudden events happen. Okay, so hindsight is always 2020. When I look back on everything, the J world, my childhood, even all of my adventures the last 50 years, it's like now you can look back and see how everything played out. You can look back and see everything that I went through contributed to an awareness that I have today. Climbing Mount Whitney and the altitude sickness is no different than right now people are dealing with like an altitude sickness. And they're not even changing altitudes, but their environment is changing altitudes, changing molecular structures and weight and density and, environmental, temperatures, and all that contributes to how your blood interacts with your immune system. So hindsight is always 2020. Here's what I will be covering. 2024 is going to be a very aggressive year, election year, trials and tribulations, eclipses, hurricanes, tornadoes, and storms. And category 6 is on the horizon. Disease X, Y, and Z from the lack of conditioning because of the epipen. Why am I blaming the epipen? Well, it's just one of many things, but when you have something that's an auto-injector that causes certain hormones to relax all the muscles and relax all the arteries and capillaries and things of the nature, and doesn't allow you to condition yourself to release what needs to be released, and and take on what needs to be taken on, then when you get addicted to any kind of pharmaceutical or herbal remedy, you are not conditioning yourself to handle aggressive situations when they happen. You see, it's all conditioning. And the thing with taking away people's pain and giving them auto injectors so they don't have to work their immune system the way it's supposed to, yeah, it's nice, right? When you have allergies, it's nice to have a drug to take away the symptoms so you don't feel bad anymore. It's nice, and then things are okay in a slower frequency environment like the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. But then when the climate changes and you're so used to having something to just take away the pain, take away the ability for the body to release and take on, then you're not going to get those drugs in time, or those drugs will be pointless. The epipens will be pointless. You probably won't even get to it in time. When you have something as aggressive as climate change and the bloom, and then formidable fungal infections, and we have a climate that is so favorable to something like a Candida auris, not like so much albicans or any other candida, but Candida auris, which is so resistant. And it's an extremophile. What's that? It's resistant to medication. It can handle high heat and cold and dryness. It can live on surfaces. And it also is extremely invasive. And people hold temperatures, body temperatures, that will be favorable for those conditions. And when the conditions change and the barometric pressure rises and falls, then that extreme bloom, and then blood vessels are not prepared or conditioned. Neither are colons, neither are intestines, neither are arteries and capillaries or lymphatic system. Okay? And so disease X, Y, and Z from the lack of conditioning because of the epipen. I was very lucky I was not given the epipen every time I had a spring allergy attack in my childhood. Oh, I used to sneeze so hard and so violently, you'd see it on the wall right next to you. You'd just see all that boogers and whatever, because that's what I was dealing with, was so much of the antigen. Okay? And it was from climate change, blood vessels bursting. So much antigen, climate change, and the body's trying to release, and then so blood vessels pop in, nosebleeds, headaches, stomach aches. But what was I given for spring allergy? It was like Claritin or Benadryl or Triaminic. I wasn't given an EpiPen. I think my mother told me a long time ago that she says that she used the over-the-counter meds, not aggressive pharmaceuticals. Like some of these kids are given the ADD medication. What is it, Ritalin? Some of these kids that have an aggressive immune system and so much connect activity in the brain that then they are slowed down through something like a Ritalin that then causes future complications. And you can ask those who have been forced Ritalin what it's done to their immune system in the future when they're in their 20s and 30s. So I was very lucky I was not given the EpiPen every time I had spring allergy attack in my childhood. I was extremely lucky. Thank you, Mother. I might have suffered nosebleeds and headaches and everything else, but I was given just Benadryl and other things that put me to sleep, not an EpiPen. So I remember when it was springtime and we were raking the leaves with my dad, and I would be so tired, walking around so tired. And I would fall asleep on the couch in the living room. And my mother would be like, wake up. You have to wake up. You can't be sleeping. You have to sleep at night, not during the day. And I'm just like a zombie. I remember these things. And I think she figured out that the Benadryl was putting me to sleep. I mean, that had to have been written as a side effect, but who knows how that works. But I was forced to wake up and not sleep when I needed to. We had to get up hella early in the morning, do our chores, and go to bed like at 6 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night. Okay? And when you're dealing with spring allergy season, and then you're given sleepy drugs like Benadryl and antihistamine, God. Okay, that's crazy. Remember in my 20s, I was trying to escape some stuff, and I would take a bunch of Benadryl and just fall asleep. Yeah, you can abuse those type of drugs. It's not good. It's not good. Benadryl is not a good drug to be on at all. No, no. And so I will never take over-the-counter medication ever again. And so the EpiPen was invented in the 1970s. It was made to weaken future genetic lines. It was made to weaken children. And it was now we have adults who are weakened as children who will then have an issue with climate change, along with the children who are on these EpiPens. That's why my disgust with the holistic industry and the medical industry, they made you weaker. They made your children weaker. And since I was already malnourished as a baby, I could not afford to be weakened by the medical system too much. My mother was correct. She did not give me that EpiPen. I'm so glad she did not give me that EpiPen. That would have sealed my fate. But now we're seeing strong kids become weaker through the medical and holistic system. And we're watching future parents procreate extremely weak children. 23-year-olds getting married off at such a young age, who've already had back issues, spinal issues, and then they're probably going to get married, or they already got married, and they're going to have a child. That child's going to mangle her insides. But you know how that works. No one cares. They had a kid because they were told to. That kid was weak. The parent was weak. That kid's now married off. Probably very sexualized. Married to a good family. Looks good on paper. She'll have a baby just like Steel Magnolias. When Shelby, who had a major condition, married to this lawyer, this highfalutin lawyer over there in the South. And you see Sally Field's character is very worried about her daughter, Shelby, who is going to basically have a baby, and it's going to cause her future death, and it did. I see Steel Magnolias all over the fucking internet, especially in Silicon Valley, where girls are highly sexualized, married off to good families, and are completely in deficit, have issues in infrastructure, and they're going to be just like a Shelby. Oh, I have to have a child for my husband, for my in-laws, for society. The sacrificial lamb. And so we're watching future parents procreate extremely weak children. And then when climate change comes around and they don't have the blood vessels or the immune system to handle extreme amounts of growth, what do you think is going to fucking happen? Blood vessels burst, heart attacks, strokes, aneurysms, died suddenly in the sleep. Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster. That's what's basically might happen in the future. It's already happening. Has it happened in anyone in your world where an actual child has died? When it hasn't happened in your world, or a kid that was basically healthy, wasn't fighting too many crazy conditions. We have kids that are like, cancer, fighting cancer or other type of stuff, and they die. Okay, people expect that. But when you have a child that's been relatively healthy, relatively active, and no one's seen any issues, and then they just die in their sleep, that's when shit's gonna get real. And somebody was saying that, I don't know if that was a real person or not. Yeah, I'm not even gonna say that. So the more common side effects include for epipens is tachycardia, so heart palpitations. As a child, a weak child, as a baby or even toddler or a child with weaker infrastructure, I couldn't afford a tachycardia, like heart palpitations. I couldn't afford hypertension, headaches, or anxiety, apprehension, palpitations, diaphoresis, nausea, vomiting, weakness, tremors. Those are the side effects of the epipens. That's no different than right now this environment. But I don't have any headaches, but I'll have the heart palpitations, but I've conditioned myself to deal with them. It's not going to kill me. The hives that I had the last couple of days, they were pretty bad yesterday. It was crazy. They were so itchy, and it gave me so much energy and, of course, intellectual capability and making connections. And saying sickness is intelligence. Sickness is intellectual capability. Sickness is innovation. When people put asleep their sickness, they have taken away intelligence, future intelligence. And what happens in the medical holistic system and the energy healing world, people have taken away vast amounts of intelligence by putting to sleep their symptoms and not feeding them, of course, either, because people starve their symptoms. When I told my husband last night, I had spaghetti yesterday right after I had all those hives. I was like wolfing the spaghetti down. I fed those hives. And that was it. That's all it was. That was it. And then I itched and they were gone. My immune system took care of those hives. I didn't even have really a vast amount of poop this morning. It was really actually minimal. I wasn't too hungry. I made deer meat and spaghetti for my husband. I had a little bit of deer meat, but I already ate my spaghetti yesterday after I had those major hives. So you feed sickness. You don't starve it. You remedy all your sickness away. You're gonna take away vast amounts of intelligence, intellectual capability, as well as life force. And that's what's going on in the population. Children are weaker because of that. Parents are. So are people who are not children or parents or just single people trying to survive. Okay? So that's the EpiPen. All right. So now I'm going to go down from the bottom to the top. So you understand my flow of why I go to hard transitions to subject matters are not completely related. Everything's related, but I mean, there's so much. So I just got to go down like my timeline and just try to make as best connections as possible, even though it might come out of nowhere. So we know that that Trump is going through his own bullshit, and he's going to have a trial that is set to happen because of hush money and all this other stuff. And I guess those are crimes that were committed while he was in office, writing checks to people in the porn industry, Stormy Daniels, whatever. And Michael Cohen. I've been listening to these YouTube videos of people like Michael Cohen, and then this guy Midas, who is a lawyer, is also a teacher in one of the universities, who has been going over this case. And so they're saying, yeah, I mean, not them specifically. I mean, they're going over everything and talking smack about Trump, but you're seeing it even in the papers that they're going to have an actual trial, that he can't get out of it. There'll be no more stays of execution, no more delays, no more distractions. They're going to have the trial on the 25th. And so there's that. And then I've been in the conspiracy world for at least 12 years. So I've heard ever since 2012, oh, the Ides of March, beware of the Ides of March. Whatever, remember the 5th of November. Okay, you hear that was anonymous, and that was from that movie. I forget what it was called, but with Natalie Portman and the other dude, and he wore, the anonymous mask. I mean, you hear about the white hats. This is all in the conspiracy world. I've been in the conspiracy world for such a long time, and listening to all the different stories, Shakespeare, and then of course the history of Romans and all of that. So the Ides of March, and I've heard that many times, beware of the Ides of March. And I've heard it for so many times, but people kept prophesizing such major disaster events. I'm sure things happen, but it wasn't to the level that what we expected. So we were waiting for the October surprise, waiting for the Ides of March, waiting for something, and it never happened. So then you could see some people getting disenchanted with the conspiracy world because they kept prophesizing some major event that never happened. Well, right now I'm doing the same thing. I'm prophesizing some future events that will or will not happen, but we can see now history, like with the Super Bowl, Superb Owl, and then you put everything together, and the sacrifices and feasts and sacrifices, and Super Bowl, who won, the KC, and the worship of the 34-year-old. All that, and the sex and everything else. I mean, and so now we're heading into March. And then we hear about the eclipse in April. And then we know about, of course, March is the spring, the solstice, the spring solstice. March 21st, and you have Trump's trial, the 25th, and then you have April 8th, and then you have the Butler County Sheriff say stuff, and the Summit County Sheriff say stuff. I mean, it's just, and this is the thing, is that all these distractions, you still have to stay alive. And you just have to realize that when the climate changes, probably April, well, it's already changing now, when the climate changes aggressively, and it could be through a specific crazy altercation like April 8th, but you never know. You got to be able to survive it, despite all of the other distractions, the elections and the trials and shootings here and there. It's like, holy crap. And then potentially even Michelle Obama running against, who knows? Will Trump be the one, or I've heard through YouTube that once he goes to that trial, and let's say he is convicted and is maybe has to go through jail, maybe not, I don't know. And they're saying, well, you know, when the American people go and vote, and let's say they put Michelle Obama on the ballot with who knows her running mate, they will be voting for, if Trump is still on the ballot, they'll be voting for a criminal. You know, that's when we know America has gone to shit, when they vote for a criminal who was convicted in a court of law for all these, you know, illegal things that happened while he was in office. I mean, so, and then of course with the whole Ides of March, that once Julius Caesar was taken down, convicted through the death penalty by being assassinated, then it was his brother who came up and became the new king, and then caused a civil war, and then he avenged, you know, his brother's death, Julius Caesar's death, by 300 prisoners being taken down, and then who knows what kind of human sacrifice was that. I mean, it's just, everything is playing out like a whole Shakespearean type of thing, and you're just like, it's so much is going on, and so fast, you can barely keep up. But if you remember now with the things, if you remember some of the storylines in Shakespeare and in Julius Caesar and the Ides of March, and of course the movie coming out with in 2011 that matches what's going on right now, it's just like, it's just too coincidental, and there's no coincidence. But then you start putting everything together, and you start matching numbers and dates and even people's positions and they're in that specific storyline, in the reality, as well as in the movies, as well as in what happened in history. Okay? Back in 44 BC. Okay? So I would not be surprised if Michelle Obama becomes the new president. I wouldn't be surprised. And Vicky, she's on my Facebook. She posted about the woman king, an African woman king, on her Facebook, and then I put down Michelle Obama, and I'm like, she didn't answer her. If I did tag her in that, she's probably going like, Arr. But it was just so coincidental. It's so synchronistic that she posted on her Facebook the woman king that she liked, that movie, and then I, before that, posted about Michelle Obama potentially being, you know, a candidate for the Democrat side, because you know Biden is not fit. He's on his last legs. And he's done good as much as he could, and people laugh at him, but you know, that's how shit goes. And so pay attention to dates and significant events around those dates. So the Ides on the 13th or the 15th, and the Calends on the 1st. The Romans honored Jupiter, the sky god and chief deity of ancient Rome, when the full moon phase occurred on the Ides, by holding feasts and sacrifices. Okay? Human sacrifice. And we had that shooting over there in Kansas City on the 14th. Okay, you know, we have other things going on. Airplanes crashing and helicopters crashing. And it's just, jeez. So the Ides originally corresponded to the full moon, which was known for its omen in March, May, July, and October. The Ides was the 15th day, and every other month was the 13th day. And so I posted those dates. And then I cannot see the system dragging this pressure if something is going to happen longer than what it needs. Okay, us in the conspiracy world, we've been waiting for these days to happen, but we don't want them to happen, but we've been waiting for it because we knew it was going to happen. We felt it. We have evidence. We have so many things that we can connect. Our gut knows. Okay, those in the conspiracy world, our gut knows. But we have been lost in some of our factions, and there's time to evolve and figure out how to put it all together. But eventually we all will be on the same page, even the mainstreamers. But when that happens, yeah, you're not going to like all of us on the same page, because it means you can't dispute it. We're not going back to 1985 and taking away all the internet and going back to campfires and kumbaya. No, we're all be on the same page based upon the conspiracy world. And that's a scary notion to think about, but that's the reality. That's what's going to happen at some point. Okay? So I cannot see the system dragging this pressure of something is going to happen longer than what it needs to. There will be a tipping point. 2024 will most likely will be a tipping point. What tipping point means? The critical point in a situation, process, or system beyond which is significant and often unstoppable effect or change takes place. It's like Hansel and Gretel. Okay, so they set all of us up. They set the truther community, the conspiracy community, to be the alarm bells in all their different factions and then their solutions, and seeing who's going to take it to the next level and become vigilantes, of which the system will put the kibosh on. And they've also set people up to fail, getting them really comfortable in their pleasure and paradise, and legalized weed and legalized everything and made everything so easy, the energy easy to access, and all of that. So the system was fattening everyone up for the kill, so to speak. Hansel and Gretel is about the siblings, Hansel and Gretel, who are abandoned in a forest and fall into the hands of the witch who lives in a gingerbread cake and candy house, so attracted children, and the children were feeding off that house. And then the evil witch plans to fatten the children before eating them. And so that's like the nice side of like Grimm's fairy tales. And there's the other side of Grimm's fairy tales where she actually does eat the children and Gretel did not destroy the witch. But to make it palatable for the masses and give them that fairy tale ending, they made the good people, the good side win. But in reality, it was the other way around back then. But we hear, of course, there's two sides to the fairy tales. But you hear the sanitized version, so kids aren't freaking out and traumatized. And so that's why you can't play sides, because you're not writing the playbook. You're just reacting to it. And so when you get all the pleasure in paradise and have every single remedy and surgery and shortcut and potential money almost handed to you on a silver platter, that's fattening people up for the kill. You see what's going on here, right? People get so comfortable in taking away the pain and suffering, they don't have any conditioning to deal with pain and suffering. And so, yeah, disease X, Y, and Z are aimed for those who have no conditioning for disease. That's why I don't want to get too comfortable. I don't want to be suffering astronomically. But you have to understand balance. You got to suffer. Especially when the climate's changing, when economies are changing, when your society is changing. There's going to be a certain amount of suffering. And if you can't handle it, well, those systems will give you every opportunity to end your suffering on your own, to yourself. And, and if you can handle the suffering, you'll find ways to support it where you don't destroy yourself. Because suffering is energy. You have to feed that energy. So you can still live another day. What people do is they try to end their suffering and they end up ending their own life. But as long as you end your own life, no one else's, then the system is not going to argue with you. That's why you can't make claims of taking away people's pain and suffering. Everything is connected. I understood as soon as I figured out that jelly juice should not be used as a cure and cures are deadly. I knew the Federal Trade Commission was correct. I knew the OAG was correct. I even understood the perspective of Dr. Phil shedding some light on the matter. So we all could take a look at what we were doing at the time and start picking apart our own arguments and figuring out where we went wrong. I know where I went wrong. And I realized that even both the medical and the holistic system is not a place where I want to be in this time, because they weaken you. Back then, okay, it was all right. Back in the Dr. Phil days, even before that. And now in this world, I would not want to be around the medical or holistic system, because then you are not conditioning for the new environment. You are weakening your ability to handle pain and suffering. So no matter what back then, no matter whatever I felt about Dr. Phil, I was able to still turn it to my perspective and be vindicated. Because my gut was correct. I just was way ahead of my time. It was my ideas as far as not trusting doctors and whatever else was still correct for this time, but not for that time. People were not conditioned to deal with pain and suffering. But now, if you want to survive, you're going to have to deal with pain and suffering, or you end your suffering 100%. Okay, go to absolute zero. Okay, 0 Kelvin. Remember, I'm not political. I don't care who's in office, because at this point it doesn't matter. I just observe and report. And when you're not in it, you can see the pattern. So I'm not loyal to Trump. I'm not loyal to Biden. I'm not loyal to any of the politicians. They're just there to keep us divided, to keep us at each other's throats. Okay? But no matter which side you take, you're not going to win, because no matter what, the system is going to do what it's going to do. So then you have to realize that if you're not going to vote, it's not because you're saying your vote doesn't matter. It just says that you're not going to legislate morals onto somebody else and say that this person should represent somebody else. Because that's what a president and a vice president is symbolic of, is representing everybody in the U.S. But obviously that's not the case. Why would I vote for someone that doesn't represent 50% of the people? That doesn't make sense. That's like forced converting people. Instead of playing that game of saying, well, yeah, for the next 48 years, I'm going to force you to say, or I'm going to be a part of this a system that converts people, whether they like it or not, for at least 48 years. And I'm going to say 50% of the population is being represented, even though they don't want to be, by this person, and I'm a part of that. No, I will assimilate to each side. But I'll not play religion with politics. And that's what politics is when you're voting, is you're forced converting people. Because they're going to have to deal with, even though they don't want to, they're going to have to deal with whatever president they didn't like. And why do they like it? Because they were told all these things. They were radicalized for or against something, never understood the need to understand both sides. And so then you put them in a position to resist and then, of course, destroy themselves. Okay? And so when you're not in it, you can see the pattern so clearly. When you're not emotionally attached to a situation, you can see patterns so clearly. Okay, I can only save myself. There's nobody or anything else that can represent who I am. I represent me, and no matter what, change is always inevitable. Every 48 years, change will happen. And I'm sure even back then, psychologically, people were not that different. 44 BC, 2024 AD, the only differences are the costumes and the architecture. Because the people back then in 44 BC, you put somebody in a costume, they look like someone from back in the 44th century or whatever that is, 44 BC century. So when I look at my husband, he looks like someone from the Civil War or a Yankee, just put on the costume, or a musketeer. My husband has history of the ages. I could put my husband way back in history if I want to, and he would still also fit in with what's going on today. Okay? And so people back then are not that different than people today. Psychology is not that different. It's just then you're able to explain it better. But the human condition is not that different. And so, yeah, I'm not going to write that. Okay, so disclaimer, everything could be coincidental or pre-planned. Choose your own adventure. So this is when I started doing all like the math and looking for the patterns. And I like numbers, I like patterns, I like theories, I like all that stuff, right? And so I just want to make sure that I'm not making absolute claims. So this is for the Federal Trade Commission telling me you cannot make absolute claims. There's no absolutes. Okay, Federal Trade Commission, I get what you're saying. You got to give people options that it's either all organic or it's all synthetic and you choose. And I'm not saying one or the other is the most absolute. So I learned my lesson back in 2018, just so you know. So disclaimer, everything could be coincidental or pre-planned. Choose your own adventure. So 44 BC equals 4 plus 4 equals 8. Julius Caesar. That's when he was the Ides of March, right? And then 2024, 2 plus 2 plus 4 equals 8. Donald J. Trump. The Ides of March is 74th day of the Roman calendar. 7 plus 4 equals 11, which corresponds to March 15th. It is a day of religious observances and deadlines for settling debts. The Ides of March is associated with misfortune and doom. It is most well known as the day in 44 BC when the Roman dictator Julius Caesar was assassinated by senators who wanted to preserve the Roman Republic. The assassination is immortalized in William Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar, where the phrase "Beware of the Ides of March" appears multiple times. The Ides originally corresponds to the full moon, which was known for its omens in March, May, July, October, and the Ides was the 15th day, and every month it was the 13th day. And so when I added 15 and 13, okay, 1 plus 3 plus 1 plus 5 equals 10, March 25th, the trial of the Trumps exactly 10 days after the 15th of March. The Ides on the 13th and 15th, and the Calends on the 1st. The Romans honored Jupiter, the sky god and chief deity of ancient Rome, when the full moon phase occurred on the Ides by holding feasts and sacrifices. And then you have the superb owl feasts and sacrifices. As the Super Bowl celebration was winding down at the Union Station on February 14th, officers at the events responded to gunfire. Since this moment, the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department has been investigating this horrific crime. Okay? And so in 2011, Columbus Pictures released a movie called The Ides of March about a campaign staffer who learns about the dirty politics while working for presidential candidate. Then you have Michael D. Cohen, who went up against Trump and outed everything that was going on. And then you have Donald J. Trump, and then you have all of the porn industry and, Stormy Daniels and whatever. But also on the 14th with the Kansas City, you see all the red and the white. When you watch that video, people chasing those juveniles down, it was all red and white. And you know that the Valentine's Day massacre. I mean, hey, but it's all coincidental. It's all coincidental. And so March 25th, 2024, the trial, symbolically, this will be the takedown of what the system would deem as a dictator or a Julius Caesar. So Worm Moon 2024, key takeaways. In March of 2024, the full moon will occur on March 25th at 7 GMT time, 2 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is traditionally called the worm moon. This year, it can also be called the Paschal full moon, as it occurs after the March equinox. So then, Paschal land, Passover and all that stuff. Yeah, Passover and Easter and all. And so Julius Caesar, his death indictment turned conviction, because when he was assassinated, that was a conviction. He was accused, yes, but probably he didn't hear the accusations, but he was convicted before he was able to defend himself. And so his death indictment turned conviction triggered a civil war that ultimately led to the rise to power of his great nephew and adopted son, Octavian, and who became the first Roman emperor, Augustus Caesar. And watch, find out that Michelle Obama is related to, Trump. I don't know if that would be true or not, but imagine if that connection was. But, with people who don't like Obama, especially the right wing, and if she actually becomes president, you can imagine the kind of civil war people are going to be facing because of so much resistance and opposition to Obama and communism and all that. So, you're seeing how the story's unfolding. It's pretty grim. Okay? So then, oh gosh, let me just do something real quick. My curiosity is just, somebody said something and I want to see what they said. Oh, okay. Yeah, I can't see that one. People are funny. Okay, so about beautiful women. So, Megan Fox, hot chick in Hollywood. A lot of them are in Hollywood. And a lot of them are trying to keep up with everybody else, trying to fight time, trying to fight deterioration, trying to fight entropy. And at some point, a lot of women, 25 to about 40-something, they hold relative equilibrium. I would say maybe 20 years of relative equilibrium, whatever that means. Well, this young lady, Megan Fox, she was hot maybe, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. But getting constant work done to you, Botox, plastic surgery, losing more and more weight and all that. I'm telling you, when you're trying to become beautiful, and stay beautiful, and you can't fluctuate with the environment, and you're trying to keep to a certain curative level, eventually, the resistance is going to cause destruction and cause things to go cattywampus. And obviously, some people look unrecognizable when they're in resistance of change. Okay, just because menopause is the change that most women are expecting doesn't mean you have to die from it. But it means at some point when you've reached that Hayflick limit of 50 times redoubling itself, the somatic cells, and the body wants to change. Some people get endometriosis, and they become bigger and bigger, and that's Amy Schumer's issue. Some people get MS, which is Christina Applegate's issue. Some people get lupus and Parkinson's and fibromyalgia because they reached a certain Hayflick limit and they were in resistance and it's causing a breakdown. Okay, my PMDD actually started in 1999. I remember the first day I felt something crazy and I was crying to my boss when I was in the military, when I started feeling those weird ass feelings that were basically perimenopausal. I remember the first time all that freaking happened. Because before that, I was just running like Ricochet Rabbit all over the place. And then I started noticing changes in my behavior, changes in my feelings, changes in even body structure. It was just insane. The devil was waking up. But I was in that perimenopausal state at 25. And of course, that wasn't unheard of. That was unheard of back in 1999. So then here I am, having emotional issues and going through all this stuff and quitting jobs and having to sleep and having such craziness of being up and then being down, and people even think, oh, you're bipolar, and so imagine dealing with that and nobody understanding and calling you lazy because you're trying to take care of yourself when you're bloated or when you're highly sexualized or when you're like depressed. I mean, I'm telling you, when women have been innovated to such an extent, then it's different diseases. And sometimes you reach the Hayflick limit, when you think about it, earlier than the age 50. See, the whole Hayflick limit and then fighting disease could happen way earlier than the person's 50s, but they've had this program in the universal program of like, menopause at 50, and that's called menopause. And you have all these symptoms that would even would be similar to something like a lupus or fibromyalgia or Parkinson's or anything else. Okay, so the system has found ways to compartmentalize and mainstream certain diseases. And if they come up earlier with all these other factors, then you can call it this. And if they come up later with all these factors, it's called this. But I would bet you I was perimenopausal at 25, given the amount of programming I was under as a child and a baby, and it caused me to reach lifelines faster or burn through my 50 lifelines faster than others. And then it was suffering through that change for the last 20 fucking years. And I was probably fertile. Yes, I was fertile when I was younger, but then not so much later on. But I was still, that demon of like hotness was still there, but not so much having a baby. And that's how the system has programmed people, because either you get a woman to just have a bunch of babies and burn through her Hayflick limit and weaken her, and then she dies and her kids will be weakened until they completely procreate out of existence, or you burn through a woman's lifeline through so much different programming that she couldn't have a baby. And her life would also be shortened because the system burned through her lifelines faster through all the different programming. So that's the craziness about all the experiments in the 80s, is that some people will have a billion kids and burn through their lifelines through that way, through family and friends and all that. Or they go through so much innovation, like in Hollywood, that they burn through lifelines so fast that you really think Megan Fox is going to have a kid right now? She may not. She may fall apart. That poor girl. A lot of these girls in Hollywood, they were given pleasure in paradise, but now they're in a suffering. They're going to be in a suffering, but they're getting paid for it. But I can only imagine the misery of having to keep up that image. I can only imagine the misery. And so I said, what did I say? Oh gosh. Beautiful women are addicted to becoming perfect until they either cannot fight the change any longer or they overdo the nips and tucks and tweaks. They say, the saying goes, marry a down-to-earth woman and play with beautiful women. And men do that. They play with prostitutes. They play with, hot chicks that peruse the bars. They play with hot girls, but will they really marry them? No, if they're using them as a plaything. If they're using them just for sex, maybe a little bit of stability. Nowadays, marriage is iffy anyways. Okay, I was a beautiful woman and people played with me, but I was not marriage material until I made myself marriage material. And so now I'm pleasantly balanced and down to earth. I do not desire to be attracted to predators or attracting predators. I don't want to be so beautiful and so sexual, causing destruction. Everything has flipped in my world. I do not overdo things and I do not underdo things, and I am balanced. And that's how I choose to live my life. Because excess destroys, and you've seen it out there. I cannot afford to be excessive in body, mind, and spirit, or financially. nobody can, but hey, people take credit, will go on credit for all their excesses until the devil takes his due, and sometimes it's with your life. Okay, so then the supplements industry. Okay, people hate Rockefeller medicine because of regulation. People cause harm to themselves because they don't know how to regulate themselves. People hurt themselves to take away the pain or make stuff worse, cause them to get regulated by Rockefeller medicine. Where do you think Rockefeller medicine came from? It's called the plant kingdom. I see people post out there that they hate Rockefeller medicine because they outlawed holistic medicine. No, holistic medicine came before Rockefeller medicine. All the alchemy in 2700 BC was putting together plant proteins and aggressive heavy metals together and extreme aggressive chemical reactions to cause then, putting something to sleep or then another genetic line because of evolution, right? The uracil causing another line, a different line. I could say mutations, but what does that mean to people, right? But yes, holistic medicine and Rockefeller medicine both cause mutations. Some that are good, some that are bad. It's all relative how you want to characterize it. And so where do you think Rockefeller medicine came from? The plant kingdom. The holistic world thought they invented natural medicine. No. Natural medicine is what made up pharmacology. Medicine comes from plants. All medicines, even in labs, come from plants. Alchemy was invented way before modern day medicine, so 2700 BC, but even earlier than that. But I'm thinking like Imhotep, the first physician, playing with alchemy, doing operations, because the amount of offspring that people were developing, because of probably all the antibiotics and the holistic stuff, causing then deformities and tumors and even fertility, babies. It's the degree of strength of the medicine intended for the situation. And in this environment, natural remedies are just as powerful as pharmaceutical grade medicine because we're in a highly accelerated environment. That's how the system messed with the holistic world with the particle acceleration. And why you're seeing a lot of overdoses. Because people are in a different environment taking their usual dose of whatever, and it's too strong. The environment made whatever they're dosing that was usual in the old world, which could have been yesterday, so they overdose. Which doesn't surprise me why they find bodies at different places that are known for drug addicts. Can you imagine when they make San Francisco, the drug tourism, which if you watch some of the YouTube channels, holy crap. So they get everybody all addicted to fentanyl and whatever else, and they're all over the streets, and then you change the climate astronomically, how many people overdose and how many people just be laid out flat. That's why you don't want to be on drugs or alcohol or any kind of medication, because it's going to be stronger in this environment. That's the deception of doing all the different drugs and remedies, is that you think you're taking a low dose, but in an environment like this, it's actually a higher dose. It's stronger. So fungal diseases. Okay, virus. Virus is anything that is parasites, protozoa, proteins, fungus, and bacteria. So viruses are anything that is overgrowth in any one of those areas. And so yeast is a vital resource in our bodies. However, when out of control, fungal infections are formidable. And so virus is vital information resource under siege. So yeast is a vital information resource under siege through major infection, through some kind of foreign and even not some genetically different, but still in the same family, that is attacking the platform. And that's what's going on with Candida auris. It is a type of virus. So people would say, oh no, it's not. See, yeast is yeast, but when it's out of control, it becomes a virus. What do you think the COVID-19 is? That's why people couldn't pinpoint what it actually was, because it's a compilation of so many microbes that are parasitic, that are proteins, protozoa, fungus, and bacteria. Well, that sounds so general. Yeah, everything is natural. It's just the amount that is influential is what causes then the category of virus. And then there's names for it. There's family of viruses, family of infections. I mean, the fact that they have compartmentalized everything and called it so many different things, people don't make the connections because they live in a compartmentalized world. And someone says, okay, it's not a virus, but it's a fungus. The reason why it's a virus is because it's out of control, but just a fungus is just a fungus. But what the influence is what causes it to be called a virus. It's the influential factor. But you'd have to explain that. You can't just say, well, a fungus is a virus. No, because it's a fungus. How influential is it? Oh, okay, now it's called a virus. Because it's part of the family of microbes. With its own phylum, its own kingdom, its own classification, and you can go down all of those, the scientific names and stuff. And I've mapped those out. A couple of years ago, I mapped out, basically reinventing the wheel, regurgitating what was all over, the academic sites, and I mapped out the kingdom, the phylum, and the classifications, and just did those kind of exercises using different objects and shapes to show the differences and the separation. And that was just an exercise to make sure that I understood what those were. But then when you look at everything as a whole and you look at why you have the term virus, it's not just one specific entity. It is the influence factor of all of the microbial life is what causes the names of the viruses. And sometimes there's a specific, like a hydra, that looks like something that has legs and a body, and there's DNA in it, and there's a penile point or an injection point where it downloads information or uploads information into the body, and the body has to then deal with it and all that. So I've mapped those things out the last 7 years, and some of you have seen some of the work that I've done doing this because I had to understand the basics before I was able to make a story about it. Okay? So anyways, there's a reel that I did that this is what the rocks of a supposed giant turned into stone look like. It looks like bacon. And so, yeah, the giants did exist. It's crazy. Where do they come from? I don't know. We'll find out one day. I'm really excited when that day comes. Okay? But, all right. So, yeah, you saw that reel of the Kansas City attack. Feasts and sacrifices, and everyone's wearing red and white on 2/14. Yeah, that was pretty crazy. And then, the epinephrine stuff. Okay, this ought to tell you the statistics of the lack of tolerance during climate change. Okay, so there's statistics on how many people are under the prescription of epinephrine and how many people are really intolerant to everything. They're basically allergic to life. That's what allergies are. You're allergic to life. Because leafy greens are life, meat, milk, cheese, eggs, fruits and vegetables, air, food and water, elements, it's all life. And so, how strong are you going to make these little pens for people who are getting severe allergic reactions to everything in their environment? When it comes down to it, so many people are allergic to life. So then death is the only answer. That's fucking insane. So you can go on that and click on clinical.com under epinephrine, and it'll show you how many people are under the prescriptions, whether it's the main one or all the generic ones. And they're expensive, yeah, because so many people are intolerant. And so I posted, oh my gosh, I'm going to read this. So what does the epipen? So an epipen is an auto-injector that contains epinephrine, a medication used to treat anaphylaxis, a severe allergic reaction. Epinephrine works by relaxing the muscles in your airways to make breathing easier, helping to reverse a rapid and dangerous decrease in blood pressure, relaxing the muscles in the stomach, intestines, and bladder. Okay. You should use an EpiPen immediately if you experience severe symptoms such as shortness of breath, repetitive coughing. I had repetitive coughing a couple of years ago when the COVID came out. Weak pulse, generalized hives. I've had hives the last couple of days. Tightness in the throat, trouble breathing, swallowing. If you use an EpiPen when you don't need it, your blood vessels at the your blood vessels at the injection site will constrict, leading to decreased blood flow. You may experience pins and needles and other stuff. Okay, so this is what the EpiPen does to a person's immune system. We have stopped conditioning children to activate their own immune system and release demons and take on food. The EpiPen was the downfall of children. And since they're so weak and food intolerant, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. All this does is just keeps them weaker. But again, I can't tell you not to see a doctor. People are not conditioning themselves. People are not conditioning themselves to deal with immune system activation via nutrition. So I figured out what nutrition is. It's new attrition. And that's the receding, that's the taking away of things that are overgrowth. That's what nutrition does. That's why when you eat food and you get inflammation, it's because the body is trying to develop an immune system response to release demons. And if people can't handle it, they don't want to release the demons, they want to keep them inside. They don't want to understand immune system activation, so they're on things like this. So they rely on epinephrine. Now they're a sitting duck. That was the whole thing with the salt. Salt is an activation. That's why people were getting so many different weird things going on. You saw some people were posting pictures back then, in 2018, when her son had all of that reaction to the salt, and it brought up what needed to be released, but they weren't ready to bring up the demons. But her son had a bunch of rashes. That was at bay, under control, but it needed to be released. That's what the salt does. It's an immune system activation. That's what V's are, immune system activation. The jelly juice. Why is an immune system activation before climate change? Now you do jelly juice and climate change. It'll be so highly ionic, you'll be so cured, you'll be constipated, and that has its own issues with bloatedness and other things trapping the beast inside. So salt allergy is a food allergy. Low tolerance for immune system activation and nutrition. It's pretty bad out there. According to a 2019 study, okay, so they studied after all the whole J world, because 2019 was only a couple of years ago. Sodium chloride can trigger the production of an immune cell that promotes allergies. Yes, inflammation. Bringing up what the body needs to release the demons. Antibodies. Okay, but people have demonized antibodies on one end, called inflammation and all these things that require epinephrine, but they have promoted antibodies by taking the V's, the monoclonal antibodies, in the therapies during climate change, during the pandemic. You can't have it both ways. You can't say antibodies are good and then say antibodies are bad. Either they're good or they're bad. They can't be both. But the system plays both sides based upon their intention. So according to a 2019 study, sodium chloride can trigger the production of an immune system cell called promotes antibodies or allergies. This can make people more likely to have allergy-related issues like eczema. Research also suggests that foods high in salt might play a role in eczema outbreaks. Yeah, the body's trying to fucking release. Symptoms of salicylate allergy include asthma-like symptoms such as wheezing and trouble breathing, headaches, nasal congestion, blow your fucking nose, drink water, change in skin color, itching, skin rash or hives. And it's not even from the freaking, I just eat regular food. I put salt in my food, but I'm not going to blame the salt because I have hives. It's the fucking environment. But you know what people do? They want you to blame stuff, because if you blame something, then you'll never really understand how shit works, and then you'll die anyways, and who cares, right? So itching, skin rash or hives, swelling of the hands, feet, face, stomach, pain or upset, eczema. The most common symptoms of salicylate sensitivity involve the respiratory tract. You should call 911 and get to the nearest emergency room if you have an allergic reaction and your breathing is compromised. You feel like your face or tongue are starting to swell up. You start to have stridor, which is squeaky kind of breathing. I'm just like, oh my God. So climate change. Climate change is like having food allergies and a salt allergy. Every single symptom people deal with as far as allergies is what I'm dealing with right now during climate change. And I'm getting stronger, not weaker, and I'm getting smarter, not dumber. Now I get it. Climate change is all relative to tolerance levels to nutritional, ionic, energetic influences, whether it's food, air, or water. or other people or your environment or the weather or barometric pressure or hell, I don't know. But from what the looks of it, the population is so weak. Climate change is going to kick most of people's ASSESs, and it is. The J world was just like, oh gosh, that was kind of like the kickoff before the kickoff. And then we have climate change and the pandemic. You're seeing how intolerant people are to the air, food, and water and their environment. Boom! Epinephrine delivered, right? The epipen isn't new. It's been used since 1977. Research and development costs were recouped a long time ago. That was from the New York Times. Since its introduction in the 1980s, the EpiPen and auto-injector has saved countless lives from anaphylaxis, a severe allergic reaction during which people have issues. They don't teach your kids how to cough, sneeze, and blow their nose. They don't teach your kids to tolerate a little bit of change and evolution. No. They have weakened humans. That's some freaking crazy stuff. That's some pretty crazy freaking stuff. And so pain anywhere is the conditioning process of releasing disease, which must be fed. You need all food. Pain is an energy conversion that you cannot allow to start because it will use up your resources. Whatever food you can, eat whatever food you can, but you know you need diverse food. Transition slowly on foods that you're allergic to and cough, sneeze, and blow your nose, and yet it'll be painful when the body's getting used to nutrition. Nutrition helps you release the demons of overgrowth. New attrition. Attrition has multiple definitions. A reduction in numbers, a new reduction in numbers. Attrition can refer to a decrease in the numbers of people, something's size or its strength. For example, a company with a high rate of attrition has a reduction in numbers due to resignations, retirements, and deaths. A gradual reduction in workforce. Okay, so when you're so big and you're eating foods that will then give you the nutrition to release the demons, that's called nutrition, new attrition. See, everything's in the words if you pay attention. A wearing down or of a resistance. Attrition can also refer to a weakening or exhaustion of something through constant harassment, abuse, or attack. For example, the enemy surrounded the town and conducted a war of attrition. Okay, so right now in this climate change, we're in an attrition rate. You take nutrition, you're going to release the demons and save yourself as long as you're eating food. But the system is doing it in reverse, so to speak, and it's changing the climate so it could reduce the population. You don't understand how this works. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You're up against so much. And so I like to develop pictures or take things. See, I have right here. This is a hive. Just right now. It just developed. See? That's how fast these hives can develop, just like that. But it's no big deal. I'll just feed it. But do you see how fast it grows? Okay, so when I go on Facebook Reels and I look for fungus growth through time-lapse photography, you have to see what happens when the body is growing something and it can break blood vessels. Okay? So that's why you saw that when you have Candida auris. What if Candida auris bloom overnight in your blood vessels? You'd want to know you have a dependable blood vessels to deal with that kind of growth. And it's painful when the body's dealing with growth and it's pushing it through the different parts of the body and you have to cough, sneeze, and blow your nose to release the demons of overgrowth. See? Isn't that crazy? Look how fast that freaking happened. That was so fast. Okay? Because if your blood vessels and cellular organs are not equipped to deal with vast amounts of growth and pushing it through the exit points, then that's when the blood vessels pop. Or you have spontaneous diarrhea, which also happens. Okay? And so April 8th, Chicago White Sox versus Cleveland Guardians. And so something might happen in Chicago or Cleveland. Summit County Sheriff warned us to stay home. Cleveland is in Summit County. Okay? A footy player dies after collapsing on the pitch during training match. And so when people don't understand aggressive barometric changes in the environment called climate change, regardless of where it was catalyzed from, synthetic or organic, you choose your own fucking adventure, they will blame something. Obviously, it's not scientifically correct to blame just one thing. There's a whole myriad of things, and even the person's state of existence at the time. And if they've been weakened through epipens and diets and remedies, you have no room to blame anything. But that was the thing. You were set to fail, since the 1970s. So what do you do? Blame somebody in 1970 for what your parents bought into at the time that was normal to them? And now you happen to be so weak that you can't handle a change in the environment? And it will keep happening, right? Because it was supposed to happen. There was no way you could stop it. There's no way to really prepare for it when you learn about the stuff at the 11th hour. And when someone stops you from understanding evolution, you're fucked, because you could have understood it 5 years ago and done something to give you a little bit of strength, but people stopped you. And people are only ready when they're ready. There's no way to know when someone's ready to hear information. But at least now they have something to blame, because that's called absolution. When you blame someone or you give credit to somebody else but not yourself, that's the absolution, that's religion, that's politics, that's even science. And since you already hate me, not all of you, you can't fucking blame me, so I guess you'll blame something else someone gave you. And so what if PMS, PMDD equals premenopausal or perimenopausal? And what if I started that back when I was 25 years old in 1999? Women who have been aggressively programmed to be highly estrogenic start dealing with perimenopause probably at an early age, which is why you see self-medication happen with those who've been highly innovated. Yeah, they could be fertile on some level, but even that might go to the wayside if the symptoms are highly aggressive. Women were programmed to be farm animals and screw like bunnies and have a huge litter, and then eventually become infertile after each generation procreates itself out of existence. And that's either 50 or they're like the fifth generation that had a bunch of kids, and these kids are too weak. They can't handle climate change. So the system wanted to teach you to self-satisfy so you didn't have to engage in that situation to have children who may not survive. It's pretty crazy human programming, and it's pretty crazy dealing with humans who have been programmed or don't even know they were programmed, which is why some people have children, why some people don't have children at all, why some only have one child while others have a litter of 3 or 5 or more. And so perimenopause was exactly what I was dealing with when I was PMSing, but on such an aggressive level that I had to hide at home because I would bite somebody's head off. I would get fired from jobs because I would go off on somebody who was doing stupid shit that I didn't agree with. All that high school bullshit in those offices where you had the queen bee, and then you had the little minions, and then you had someone who was on the outside. That's exactly what I dealt with in the corporate world, and even in high school or junior high. In families too. So I'd have to hide away because everything was crazy. Perimenopause is a transition phase in menopause. It's a natural process that occurs when a woman's ovaries gradually stops working. Perimenopause typically lasts about 6 years, but can last 4 to 8 years. It usually occurs when women in their 40s to early 50s. See, but they're not taking into account, that's like the average general population, about those who have been highly innovated in their younger years. Made to be extremely estrogenic in their younger years. So that's why you get these early diagnoses of different lupus, fibromyalgia, Parkinson's, PMS, PMDD, right? But the average population experiences things in their early 40s to 50s, in their 40s to early 50s, with the average age of being 51. That's probably why I'm able to get to this point, because I've already dealt with fucking menopause, 25 years old, suffering through it. And so perimenopause is marked by changes in menstrual flow and in the length of the cycle. Other symptoms include mood swings, irritability, increased risk of depression, sleep disruption associated with hot flashes, vaginal and bladder problems, sudden surges in estrogen, which means that then sexuality, highly sexualized. Women are on the prowl when they're highly estrogenic or they get the surges in estrogen. There isn't any treatment to stop perimenopause, but a healthcare provider may recommend over-the-counter or prescription perimenopausal treatments to help ease symptoms. That's called hormone replacement therapy, or girls get their whole uterus taken out. Then that's another issue. Okay, so I had major hives yesterday. I just had a boatload of spaghetti and it felt good to eat it. So you see right there, it's still there. Isn't that crazy? Imagine all these on my back and my front. Imagine all these. Yeah, that's whatever. Okay, so now you know why I left California. You're not allowed to be sick. You're not allowed to evolve, and you're supposed to be highly sexualized, claiming some kind of orientation. That's why I left California. The whole culture was going to kill me. It almost did until I left. In California, especially Silicon Valley, you see people with a bunch of kids or some kind of sexual orientation, right? If you're not in a highly sexualized type of situation or don't have a bunch of kids, women look down on you. And if you're always sick and you're not getting treated for sickness, they will think you're lazy. Oh, I had that happen. Oh, you have PMS? You're just lazy. Oh, you got fired from another job? You're just stupid. You have issues. You need to be on drugs. That's why California is so fucked up, full of very unhealthy, dying people. Because the more cured you are, the more you put yourself in a position to die suddenly, because you won't have the conditioning to handle change. Because of their paradigms, they try to force on each other and themselves. And if you're highly sexualized, not with any boyfriend, then you're called a slut. And if you're not sexualized at all, they call you a cold fish or a pat. Yeah, California is messed up. And if you don't have any kids, they call you barren. And the women are the worst to each other. And if you don't have a degree, they think you're stupid. And if you didn't have a rich boyfriend, then you're stupid. And if you weren't part of some groupie chick clique hunting boys at bars, then you were stupid. Or you had to go to the birthday parties of those who had kids and buy all their kids presents. And if you didn't do that, then you were stupid. And if you didn't have some crazy invention that was awesome and accepted, then you were stupid. That's why I left California. It was going to kill me. No, California is not very tolerant. It's not for the tolerant. California is not tolerant at all. And I wasn't even GAY. California probably is the most intolerant part of the nation. Believe me, I lived it. But then many other places are not very tolerant to anyone who looks different or sounds different because they're taking cues from California. California was what the world was supposed to be modeled from. They were the 7th largest economy for a reason. And yes, they bred intolerance into the world. All the diets and the detoxes and the holistic fuckers, which is why many people are dying suddenly because sorry, I didn't mean to say fucker. I'm getting a little bit excited. Yeah, this little thing is speaking right now. Which is why many people are dying suddenly, because you took after California. And you were bred after the 1960s in California. That was the kickoff, and everyone else copied California, called clones. Okay? So then I said, if you think I'm being unfair to Californians, look at your cliques, lifestyles. Look at all the chick cliques out there hanging out together. All they're little groupies hanging out together. Lifestyles, belief systems, intolerance to air, food, and water. It starts with food intolerances and then turns to political. Yeah, you were the 7th largest economy. It starts with Silicon Valley. I understand why it all had to be done. I don't love it, but I'm getting it out. And I had aggressive energy yesterday in the environment, and I'm getting that aggressive energy right now. It's 10 o'clock. And so I'm saying that my juice will not save anyone who has not already conditioned their blood vessels and intestines to release on their own or using my digital method. My juice will not save you ever. It was only a state of execution so you can redirect. Now, some people are using it in lieu of certain things that they could use in the medical holistic system, and so it's giving them some relief, and I understand that. If this was so bad, which it's not, but if I was so annoyed by this, I could use juice on this, but I don't need to. I can deal with it. But again, you have different tolerance levels, okay? And so some people are using the juice and their medication, or not using medication, using the juice, and they're still pulling out the crap and eating food, and it's giving them some relative relief. Okay, so I don't want to take away that, but I don't want to say that my juice is going to save you in a very aggressive environment, because again, I don't know what you're coming from. I don't know what you're working with. I don't know what you're dealing with. So I don't want to ever say that my juice is going to save anyone. You will figure out what works for you. Hold on. Okay, my juice was not to save you ever. It was only a state of execution so you can redirect, so you can think, so you're not always racked with pain, that you have some relief, but use that time wisely when you get that relief. But that was it. I've said this a million times. It was only supposed to be used as a catalyst before climate change, okay? Before the pandemic, not a cure. You had to and have to condition yourself to release and retain. And if you have not conditioned your internal immune system to deal with heart palpitations and high blood pressure, it won't matter what you do, because that's the conditioning to strengthen your heart. But with that type of exercise of your heart palpitations and all that, it's also the food, the milk, the meat, the cheese, the eggs, everything. It won't matter what you do if you have not conditioned yourself to deal with the energy. Okay, it won't matter what you do. You are not conditioned for aggressive climate change. You have always needed the milk, the meat, the cheese, the eggs, the gluten, the sugar, salt and water, and fruit and veggies. Your blood vessels and DNA ladders depend on you to feed it. So the DNA ladders are made of glucose, sugar, hydrogen, amino acids, fatty acid, amino acid, prohormones, and minerals. Okay? And when they are weak, aggressive bloom sometimes looks like a spontaneous explosive diarrhea and nosebleeds. So a couple months ago, I had nosebleeds. I would bend over, my nose would just bleed. And then it would clot up pretty quick. I wasn't just bleeding out. But yeah, the last few months, spontaneous nosebleeds. And when you're dealing with a highly ionic environment and your poop gets cured and hard and stiff, and then you strain to get it out, yeah, people have issues with heart issues because of straining so hard. Even blood comes out of their anus because that poop punctured something and caused bleeding internally. And you still have to eat to repair the damage. Okay? And so count your blessings, you are still alive when that happens. Not everyone survives aggressive barometric changes like to the environment. That is die suddenly. And so Ohio and other places have felt aggressive climate changes, and other parts of the country have not. Because I have people who are like, I don't know what the hell she's talking about. Makes you wonder, those who have no idea what I'm talking about, what they're going to experience later when they have had no conditioning. It's like they're not even ready when they don't even know what the heck I'm talking about. They have felt nothing the last 3 years. And if they did feel something, it wasn't very aggressive. What are they being set up for? If you haven't really felt anything the last 3 years and you think, oh, you're healthier than I am or anyone else, you might be set up to fail. You're not supposed to not feel anything during this climate change. Sickness was the conditioning. But you also had to feed it too, okay? Not being sick was setting your ass up to fail. I hope you survive climate change. By the way, when you break bones and you tear ligaments, that's a huge indicator your body is falling apart. You need the rest, release, and all of the food. I don't think it's ever too late to change, but you're up against a lot of people who will disagree with you. I'm sorry you're in that situation. And so I did that. I posted that video, the music video of Europe, the final countdown. Yeah, we're in the final countdown. And so I have to make a disclaimer because people think, oh, Jillian, let's talk about children and dying suddenly. I'm not trying to curse your kids, no, but I'm trying to prepare you that they're going to have to really eat a lot of food and keep eating and deal with the sicknesses out there, because you have to condition for this next environment. That's going to be it's already aggressive. I mean, see, look at that. Can you imagine this on a kid? And this is growth. Imagine somebody, and this is right here. This could have been inside my body growing somewhere as like an actual cancer growth. This could be like a tumor to somebody else when you have so many of these all over that don't have a way or any place to go. I don't want your children to die suddenly, but it might be a reality. So please expect the unexpected. I understand physiologically what is going on. Okay? Physiologically what is going on. You can't always prevent things. We're heading into some dangerous air pressure times, and they told us, do everything you can to make sure your children are very well fed. They have to be able to ride out this crazy time. I can't tell you if the food will save them. I don't even know. I don't know what they're working with. Okay? But expect the worst and hope for the best. This is all physics and biology. This is why parents and adults must save themselves. They have a better chance. They're already mature enough to be able to handle some pain and suffering if they manage it correctly based upon whatever their intention is. Sometimes you have to see a doctor because you just can't handle the pain and suffering. And so we have 2 months to psychologically prepare ourselves for some major changes. 4-8. If there are some crazy things happening in Ohio, and they change the air pressure so aggressively, and they say there's an invasion, it could be Candida auris or the migrants that came through. Everything gets activated regardless if it's synthetic or organic. Then disease X, Y, and Z. People get lost in the chaos. Prepare for everything. See, when people are staying home and staying safe, which is good, you don't want to be caught in the crossfire of someone releasing their demons, but also you don't know how many people are succumbing to situations unless you hear sirens. So you can imagine if the system realizes that's how people are cueing how many people are passing away through the sirens, will they turn the sirens on? Well, they probably have to. But see, that's the thing. I don't know. So I'm sure they'll do the sirens. But every single time I hear sirens, I know a lot of stuff's going on. I would stay home if you have the kids that day. Okay, on 4/8. Prepare for the worst. The Summit County Sheriff told people to stay home. Because when people die behind the wheel, accidents will happen. There's nothing you can do to prevent what is set to happen, biologically and physiologically. You have to be on the defense and potentially even stay home and stay safe. You can't stop what's coming because it's here. The system is preparing all of us. They have been for the last 20 years. Okay? And so you can read what Laura Ludwig said about the planning of it back in 1969. Yeah, I'm a child of the Vietnam War. I read about the weather modification over there in Vietnam and the monsoons and using weather to drive forces backwards and forwards and wherever. So, all right. So I said something in my last video about high pressure, like high altitude, high pressure, low altitude, low pressure. Not always necessarily that same. It's not always like that. You can have high pressure and low altitudes and low pressure and high altitudes and low pressure and low altitudes and high pressure and high altitudes. Climate change is when the pressure, regardless of altitude, has changed from its usual behaviors, which is why doctors are perplexed as to why such an increase in turbo cancers. Okay. Viscosity in blood, the clotting process. Some people have a lot more clotting type of situations because they're highly estrogenic. So yeah, if a woman is highly estrogenic and she's around climate change, of course, they're the ones who are pulling out, not them, but the embalmers are pulling out those strings of clots that are fitting the shape of the blood vessels. And they're rubbery, yes, because it's basically another life form that's like you. Your skin's rubbery. Imagine taking your skin and having it fit within a blood vessel. It's going to feel like you, like an animal. Okay? The vaccines were always made the same way with slight alterations based upon the differences of genomes in the population. So the vaccines are not the issue here. They're just a representation of your population. Yes, you'll get a direct inject, but how is that any different than someone getting a boatload of SEMEN in their ANAL right to their colon? That's a direct inject. Right to their colon. Okay, so if you're so worried about the V's, and stop having sex with people, regardless. Because you're getting direct inject from somebody who holds whatever's in those V's in their body. It's the air pressure that is causing viscosity in blood and, of course, fast-moving cancers. The amount of viscosity in the blood causes blood clots and dies suddenly. And yes, those blood clots are rubbery strings that clog up the arteries and capillaries, and during aggressive air pressure changes, it causes fast-moving growth, or blood clots, and turbo cancers and tumors. And people aren't conditioned to pass clots or they break blood vessels. That's why many people are dying suddenly, or why they have diagnosable conditions. But hey, I'm not a doctor. Don't listen to me. Listen to your doctor. That's why some people are stuck between a rock and a hard place. They pretty much have nowhere to go, and they're forced to listen to their doctor. But not everybody. I'm not talking to those who are too far gone. I'm trying to reach those who aren't that far gone. But even if you hate me because of what I've been saying, I still want the best for humanity. Everyone deserves a chance to live and redirect if they have the capacity to. And so what is viscosity? the state of being thick, sticky, and semi-fluid in consistency due to internal friction. Cooling the fluids raises viscosity, so when it gets colder, raises the viscosity. A quantity expressing the magnitude of internal friction as measured by the force per unit area resisting a flow in which parallel layer units distance apart have unit speed relative to one another. Plural noun viscosities. Silicone oils can be obtained with different viscosities. Pressure with height. Pressure decreases with increasing altitude. The pressure at any level in the atmosphere may be interpreted as the total weight of the air above a unit at any elevation. At higher elevations, there are fewer air molecules above given surface than similar surface at lower levels. Plasma density is the number of fuel ions per cubic meter. Plasma viscosity is affected by its density, temperatures, and the strength of its electric and magnetic fields. Plasma in Newtonian fluid, meaning its viscosity doesn't depend on flow characteristics. Its normal values is 1.10 minus 1.38 MPa at 37 degrees Celsius, and it is independent of age and gender. Plasma viscosity can be higher in various inflammatory, metabolic, or cardiovascular diseases. Understanding the viscosity of plasma could help scientists untangle some of the barriers to self-sustaining fusion. Density is determined by the atomic weights of the atoms forming the molecules. Viscosity has to do with the shape of the molecule in the liquid, which determines the extent to which adjacent molecules can get tangled up with one another. And then you look at the climate change and the altitudes that are coming down to you and the changes of the altitudes coming down to you, like climate change. You're not going up to Mount Everest. Mount Everest is coming down to your ass. And that's the issue people are dying from. And so Batya Gottman, she lives in Seattle. She posted somewhere in her a couple days ago about plasma density. And I just remember about viscosity. She didn't even say viscosity, but I said viscosity. And I know that I remembered her talking about plasma density, and viscosity are kind of the same thing. Okay, so when you clear your body, mind, and spirit, and you release all those demons, and you take on substance, release the demons of overgrowth, then you'll have a really clear recall of memory and start putting things together so quickly. It would be like yesterday, but it was like weeks ago that someone said something that came to your mind, how it would be appropriate to make a connection here, there, and everywhere. That's genius intelligence if you can handle the battle that's going to be formidable within. Not everybody's going to be able to do it, but that's what's available. And so currently in this environment, with how vast and how accelerated change is, hot women, I would not worship them. I would not emulate them. I would avoid marrying them. Have fun with them, but think twice before you commingle finances together. They burn extremely bright and then they fall, especially in this environment. The environment is unrelenting. Okay? But why is that? Because hot women are starving. Hot women are doing plastic surgery and Botox. Hot women have a lot of issues and probably even very tunneled because they have to be very skinny. Hot women kind of stay in one way and that's about it, and have an issue with change. So if you're a kind of a changing person and you have a hot chick who can't change, you're in for a world of fucking hurt. They burn extremely bright and then they fall, especially in this environment. The environment is unrelenting. And so Venus, Venous, relating to the veins, okay? Relating to the dark red oxygen poor blood in the veins and pulmonary artery. So dark red oxygen poor blood in the veins and pulmonary artery. Then Venus, right? You know, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Women have been likened to Venus. Venus is a cloud-swaddled planet named for a love goddess and often called Earth's twin, but pulled up a bit closer and Venus turns hellish. Our nearest planetary neighbor, the second planet from the sun, has a surface hot enough to melt lead. Hot women supernova. And when they fight change, it is so uncomfortable and everyone is in the crosshairs. Just be careful of anyone who fights change, men or women. They become predatory, and because they cannot handle change and conditioning to adapt. And of course, insecurity because they've relied on their looks for such a long time. Insecure men and women are predatory, which is why I focus on the brain in both men and women, regardless of what you look like. And if you don't have a brain, you'll be using your body. If men cannot handle you changing, they're also insecure. So women have to make a choice about everything. Some men are mature enough to change and adapt. Other men are not. No matter what, women must find a way to adapt to the changes and or stand on her own 2 feet. Okay? And so climate change is requiring adults to be potty trained to save themselves. I had a fart a couple days ago and I didn't shit the bed because my body was able to catch it and hold it off for a minute while I went to the restroom. My husband too. He had an accident. That was a while back, and then he's able to do it now, and he's able to get to the bathroom before because he has Rh negative. And so climate change is requiring adults to be potty trained to save themselves. I know it sounds funny, but remember, we're now heading into beyond the Hayflick limit. And so lack of conditioning, of internal conditioning, sets people up for die suddenly. So now I know why I had so many nosebleeds as a kid during spring allergy season and why I was in the hospital for a concussion. This is interesting. As a kid, because blood vessels were breaking internally, causing the symptoms of a major headache, dizziness. I remember a massive, massive headache. I remember stomach issues. I remember being so dizzy, and they couldn't figure out why. So I just made up a story that I fell off the monkey bars and hit my head. I'm sure they knew that was a lie because you'd have to see the point of impact. When you hit your head, you would see it, right? But when everyone's asking you what happened at the schoolyard and you don't know what to say, you say whatever story comes to mind at the time because they can't figure out where the hell did I have this neurological condition? A concussion. It's like an internal concussion when you have blood vessels breaking, but where does it come from? And the climate's changed in the 80s. I mean, they had El Nino and La Nina and all that. There's a lot of storms in the 80s. And so I just made up a fucking story. But what else am I going to say at 6 years old, right? I remember that. I remember when I saw Dr. David, my pediatrician, that was at the hospital. And I think it was, where was it? It wasn't Valley Med. It was another one. El Camino Hospital. And I remember getting out of the bed and trying to walk over to Dr. David. And I was toddling around. I was dizzy. I was fucking dizzy. They just kept me stable and I survived it. But I can imagine it was probably blood vessels breaking in the brain because of climate change. And remember I came from Vietnam, malnourished. Okay? And so when everybody's asking you what happened at the schoolyard and you don't know what to say, you say whatever story comes to mind. Nobody's the wiser. Wow, how does one explain spontaneous disease if one does not factor in barometric pressure influences biological mechanisms? I was lucky enough that I did not die from that breakage. I was lucky enough the last 3 years I didn't die in my sleep from not treating any disease. I fed it to repair any breakage and reinforce my immune system. Oh my God. But right now, by the way, there's no more nosebleeds or migraine headaches. I repaired the damage from the past, present, and the future. Okay, so there is a light at the end of the tunnel that even though you have to go through all these things that you had to deal with ever since you were a kid and now, because bringing up all the past issues, eventually you'll release the demons and repair the damage. And it's just growth. It's just these occasionally. If you're O positive. If you're O negative, it might be a little bit different. If you're AB positive, negative, I don't know. That's yet to be seen. And so I remember eating so much spaghetti during my times of PMS way many years ago and staying home and calling in sick, dealing with headaches and stomach aches and stiff necks. The fact I stayed home and ate so much food in response to my PMDD 20 years ago probably saved my ass when I had massive migraines the last 3 years. I could have died in my sleep while dealing with body conditioning itself the last 3 years. The fact I woke up after each episode speaks to how I knew innately it was the food that was going to save me. All food. It was worth being vilified for not being like everybody else in California. Today it was worth going my own way. I saved my own life. Sometimes you won't know until 50 years later the choices you made in your younger years was what saved you later on. And if you die, it doesn't matter anyways. You died. You're dead. That's why you must save the parents. Children don't have enough history. It'll be a crapshoot if they survive, especially if they can't handle sickness. Adults have enough history they can see and maybe look back and see hindsight 2020 and make educated choices. Okay? And so as the climate is changing, the pressure on the blood vessels increased greatly, and some people were not born with either strong blood vessels or never conditioned themselves to strengthen their blood vessels. During climate change, the elderly, the immunocompromised, and some of the children will succumb to aggressive air pressure changes, and some will have spontaneous combustions and not survive the energy conversion, of which I showed then that young lady over there, I think in Queensland, family left devastated after their daughter suddenly died in her sleep. Okay? And so that's, yeah, so the new world is about internal conditioning, not external conditioning. I wouldn't be a yoga, going over there into the gym and doing all that stuff. Leave that for those who, don't understand that they have to do things a little bit differently. And understand that we're in a really different world. Okay? And you need meat, milk, cheese, eggs, fruits, vegetables, gluten, sugar, salt. And I'll tell you, it's a battle. And when I'm scratching, like I feel like right here in the back of my neck, I feel there's a little thing here. I feel the back of my husband's neck. Nope, there's nothing there on the back of his neck. I did purposely feel it, and I don't feel nothing. It's just a regular neck, but I have a little bit of a hump. That's my immune system. That's what's keeping me alive. This is crazy, though. So, anyways, I just hope you all survive what's going on. But just keep swimming. Okay? Keep swimming. Hugs to you. All right, bye.